So today I want to discuss something that almost nobody in mainstream media is willing to say out loud. The United States and Israel launched a massive air war against Iran on February 28, 2026. They killed the supreme leader. They struck nuclear facilities, military bases, command centers, and within hours, the White House declared that the mission was a success. The president said, and I am paraphrasing here, that America had begun major combat operations to eliminate imminent threats and defend the American people. The media covered it as a show of overwhelming force, a decisive blow, a victory. But I want you to stay with me today, because by the end of this class, I am going to show you why what looks like a victory is, in structural terms, the beginning of America's most significant strategic defeat since Vietnam. And I do not say that to be dramatic. I say it because the math, the history, and the incentive structures all point in the same direction. But first, let me show you why. Now, some of you have been following this class for a while, and you will remember that before this war started, I made a prediction. I said that the structural conditions in the Middle East, the economic pressures, the political incentives inside Washington, the posture of Iran, all of these things were converging toward a military confrontation. Many people said that was an exaggeration. Many people said diplomacy would prevail, and now here we are. 6 weeks into a war that has closed the Strait of Hormuz, sent oil past $100 a barrel, and forced the largest release of strategic petroleum reserves in history. So when I tell you today that this war ends badly for America, I am not guessing. I am reading the structure, and the structure does not lie, okay? So let me explain the method, because I never want you to simply accept what I say. I want you to see the reasoning and test it yourself. That is what this class is about. I use a framework I call predictive history. It rests on 3 pillars. The first is structure. What are the deep forces shaping a situation? Geography, population size, economic systems, energy dependencies. These things move slowly. They constrain what is possible regardless of who is in charge. The second pillar is incentives. In game theory, every player is trying to maximize their own interest. So I always ask, what does each player actually want? Not what they say in press conferences, but what their structural position forces them to want. Because those two things are almost always different. The third pillar is historical pattern recognition. History does not repeat exactly, but empires are empires. Overextension is overextension, and certain dynamics appear again and again across centuries. If you know those patterns, you can see them unfolding in real time. So let me apply all 3 pillars to this war. First, let us understand what each player actually wants, because as I said, what people say and what they actually want are very different things. What does America say it wants? It says it wants to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. It says it wants to degrade Iran's military capabilities and protect its allies in the Gulf. It says it wants stability. Now, what does America actually want? America wants to maintain control over the global energy architecture. The petrodollar system, in which all oil is traded in US dollars, is the foundation of American financial power. It is what allows the United States to run enormous deficits, print money, and fund a military that costs more than the next 10 countries combined. Controlling the Middle East means controlling the oil. Controlling the oil means controlling the dollar. That is the real war. Everything else is narrative. What does Iran say it wants? It says it wants sovereignty, an end to sanctions, and recognition as a legitimate regional power. What does Iran actually want? Survival. Iran has watched Iraq get invaded. It watched Libya get destroyed. It watched Syria get destabilized. Iran knows that if it does not fight back, it is next. But Iran also wants something more. It wants permanent control over the Strait of Hormuz as an economic lever. It wants its frozen assets released, and it wants any future settlement to be guaranteed not by American promises, which Iran considers worthless after the collapse of the nuclear deal, but by structural facts on the ground. Iran does not want a piece of paper. It wants a reality that protects it whether America keeps its word or not. What does Israel want? Israel wants to position itself as the indispensable security partner for the post-American Middle East. It is auditioning, and I have used this word deliberately before, to be the regional enforcer for the global financial system. Israel is showing the world that it has the military capability, the intelligence apparatus, and the political will to project force in ways that America increasingly cannot sustain. Prime Minister Netanyahu said in a televised address that Israel had crushed Iran's nuclear program and missile capabilities. American intelligence assessments have raised serious doubts about the extent of that damage. And the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, they want to survive. They are caught between two much stronger powers, and their strategy is simple. Stay close to whoever wins. They will realign the moment they see which direction the wind is blowing. We are already seeing this. Pakistan brokered the ceasefire. Saudi Arabia is rerouting oil through the Red Sea port of Yanbu. Qatar declared force majeure on its gas contracts. These are not the actions of confident allies. These are the actions of countries hedging their bets. Okay? Now I have the players and their real interests. Let me give you the structural facts, because interests tell you what people want. Structure tells you what is actually possible. And these structural facts are the foundation of everything I'm about to predict. Structural fact number 1 of 4. The air war succeeded tactically, but failed strategically. Let me explain what I mean by that. Yes, America and Israel struck nuclear facilities at Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. Yes, they killed the supreme leader and dozens of senior officials. Yes, they destroyed a significant portion of Iran's air defense systems and missile launchers. Tactically, these are real achievements. But strategically, what did they accomplish? Iran is still standing. Iran still controls the Strait of Hormuz. Iran still has the capacity to fire missiles and drones at American bases and allied countries across the Gulf. A leaked Defense Intelligence Agency assessment, which the administration called a political leak, concluded that Iran had moved much of its enriched uranium before the strikes, and that the damage set back Iran's nuclear timeline by only a matter of months. Here is the thing. No country in modern history has ever been defeated by air power alone. This is one of the most well-established facts in military history. The Americans bombed North Vietnam for years. Vietnam did not surrender. The Allies bombed Germany for years in World War II. Germany surrendered only when ground troops physically occupied its territory. Air campaigns destroy infrastructure. They do not change political realities. And the political reality is that Iran has 90 million people who believe they are fighting for their survival. Structural fact number 2 of 4. The cost-exchange ratio is destroying America's position. Iran fires a drone that costs somewhere between $20,000 and $50,000. America fires an interceptor missile to shoot it down that costs $3 to $10 million. That is a ratio of 60 to 200 to 1. In the opening days of the war, Iran launched roughly 80 missiles on the first day, 60 on the second, 30 on the third. Those numbers declined as Iran's capabilities were degraded, but they did not stop. Iran struck the Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia and reportedly damaged or destroyed an E-3 AWACS aircraft, which is essentially a flying command center worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Multiple verified photographs showed the plane split in half. There is intelligence suggesting that Iran may be receiving targeting data from Russian satellites, a claim supported by Ukrainian President Zelensky, who said Ukrainian intelligence confirmed this. Now here is the detail I want you to remember. America is racing to accomplish its objectives before it runs out of interceptor missiles. The most powerful military in human history is in a race against the clock, and Iran's dispersed, low-cost drone production capacity can be rebuilt far faster than America's precision munitions supply chain, where a single weapon system like the F-35 took 26 years to develop. Structural fact number 3 of 4. The economic damage is systemic and accelerating. The Strait of Hormuz carries roughly 20% of the world's seaborne oil and a similar share of global liquefied natural gas. Iran effectively closed it on March 4th. By mid-March, oil production from Kuwait, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE had dropped by at least 10 million barrels per day. Brent crude surged past $120 a barrel. Gas prices in America hit $4 a gallon, a 30% increase. The International Energy Agency called this the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market. Let me say that again. The largest supply disruption in history. But the damage goes far beyond oil. Gulf states import over 80% of their food through the strait. By mid-March, 70% of the region's food imports were disrupted. Consumer prices in the Gulf spiked between 40 and 120%. Iran struck desalination plants, which provide 99% of the drinking water in Kuwait and Qatar. The crisis shifted from fiscal to humanitarian, and this is the part that should genuinely concern everyone. The disruption also affects global sulfur supply, fertilizer production, and aviation fuel. The war more than doubled the price of kerosene-based products. Airlines are rerouting flights around the entire Middle East, adding hours to journeys and billions in fuel costs. This is not a regional crisis. This is a global economic shock. Structural fact number 4 of 4. American political will is fragile and declining fast. A Pew Research Center survey conducted in late March found that 61% of Americans disapprove of Trump's handling of the conflict. 59% said the initial decision to use force was wrong. A Quinnipiac poll found that 74% of voters oppose sending ground troops into Iran. Even among Republicans, 52% opposed ground troops. Only 36% of Americans approve of how the president is handling Iran, according to a Marist poll. That is lower than his approval on Iran during the Soleimani crisis in 2020. Now, here is why this matters structurally. America is not a country that absorbs casualties quietly. We saw this in Vietnam. We saw it in Iraq. We saw it in Afghanistan. Every time America enters a long, expensive, painful war with no clear victory in sight, political support erodes. And with it, the ability to sustain the war erodes too. Iran knows this. Iran has studied American political psychology for decades. Its entire strategy is built around pushing America past its pain threshold. And 6 weeks into this war, the threshold is already in sight. Okay? So now I have the structure, the players, and the constraints. Let me walk you through how this ends. Because I believe this war resolves along one of two paths. And which path it takes depends on a single critical question. Does America escalate to a ground war, or does it find a way out? Scenario 1. America does not send ground troops into Iran. It keeps this an air and naval war. In this scenario, the ceasefire that began on April 8th either holds or is followed by intermittent periods of fighting and negotiation. The peace talks in Islamabad, which lasted 21 hours and ended without agreement, become the template. America demands that Iran surrender its nuclear program entirely. Iran demands control of the Strait, the release of its frozen assets, and an end to Israeli attacks on Lebanon. Neither side gets what it wants quickly. But the economic pressure builds. Oil stays above $100. The global economy slides toward recession, and eventually within 12 to 24 months, America finds a face-saving exit. The president goes on television and declares victory. He says America has degraded Iran's capabilities, achieved its objectives, and is bringing forces home. But the reality on the ground tells a different story. Iran survives. The Strait of Hormuz becomes a permanently contested space with Iran exercising de facto control. The Gulf states realign, and the petrodollar system, already under pressure from Chinese yuan-denominated oil contracts, weakens significantly. America loses, but it survives. It retreats from the Middle East, damaged but intact. Scenario 2. America escalates to a ground invasion. This is the scenario that keeps strategic analysts awake at night. There are already more than 50,000 American troops in the Middle East. Marines from the 31st MEU aboard the USS Tripoli arrived in late March. Elements of the 82nd Airborne Division are deploying. The Pentagon is preserving the option for ground operations, but a full ground invasion of Iran would be catastrophic. Iran is 4 times the size of Iraq. It has 90 million people. It is mountainous terrain. And Iran has been preparing for exactly this scenario for 25 years. Underground bases in mountain ranges, decentralized weapons production, systems designed specifically for close-range combat. And here is the counterintuitive twist that most analysts miss. The greatest danger of a ground invasion is not inside Iran. It is around Iran. If American forces are physically committed inside Iranian territory, what prevents Iraqi militias from threatening American supply lines through Kuwait? What prevents Yemen from escalating attacks on Saudi Arabia from the south? Suddenly, America's bases across the Gulf, the bases it needs to supply its ground forces, are threatened from multiple directions simultaneously. America would need hundreds of thousands of troops. The entire active U.S. military is roughly 1.3 million people. A draft would become a serious possibility, and a draft in 2026 America, with its current political divisions, would be socially explosive. This is the ground invasion trap. If America walks into it, this is not a defeat. It is an empire-ending catastrophe. So, let me now address the questions I know you are asking. Question 1. Will nuclear weapons be used? No, I am confident about this. The nuclear taboo is one of the most powerful norms in international relations. No country has used nuclear weapons in warfare since 1945. Breaking that taboo would trigger global nuclear proliferation overnight. Every country without nuclear weapons would immediately try to get them. America will not use them. Israel will not use them. The costs are civilization ending, and everyone knows it. Question 2. Can diplomacy still work? The Islamabad talks failed after 21 hours. Vance said Iran refused to commit to abandoning its nuclear program. Iran said America made excessive demands. Pakistan is pushing for a second round. But here is the structural problem with diplomacy. Iran has no reason to trust American agreements. America signed the nuclear deal in 2015 and tore it up 3 years later. From Iran's perspective, any deal with America is temporary. Iran wants structural guarantees, not promises. It wants facts on the ground that protect it regardless of who sits in the White House. And that means Iran will keep pushing until the facts change. Question 3. How long will this last? This is the hardest question. My best estimate is that the active military phase concludes within 6 to 12 months. The broader reorganization of the Middle East takes 2 to 5 years, but the direction is clear. America is leaving the Middle East. The only question is how much damage it does to itself and the world before it accepts that reality. The math simply does not work. You cannot sustain a war where your opponent spends $50,000 for every 3 to 10 million you spend defending against it. You cannot maintain domestic political support when 61% of your population thinks the war was a mistake. You cannot hold the global economy hostage to a conflict that has triggered the largest energy disruption in history and expect the rest of the world to stay silent. China, Russia, and India are already making that clear. Let me bring this together with one final thought. In 415 BC, Athens launched the Sicilian expedition. Athens was the most powerful city-state in Greece. It had the strongest navy, the deepest treasury, the most sophisticated culture. It sent its best ships, its best generals, its best soldiers to conquer Sicily. The expedition was a catastrophe. Athens lost its fleet, its army, and its strategic position. It never recovered. Within a decade, the Athenian Empire was finished, not because Athens was attacked from outside, but because it overextended itself, because hubris, that uniquely dangerous form of arrogance that makes powerful nations believe they are exempt from the rules that govern everyone else, led it into a trap it could not escape. America is in that trap right now. It launched a strike that was tactically impressive and strategically hollow. It killed a supreme leader and the successor has already been named. It bombed nuclear facilities and the intelligence says the damage was limited. It projected overwhelming force and Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz anyway. The question is not whether America wins this war. Based on the structural analysis I have walked you through today, that is already decided. The question is how quickly America recognizes it, how quickly it finds its exit, and how much it costs the world before it does. And my prediction is this: America will find its exit. It will be painful. It will be humiliating, dressed up as victory the way Vietnam was dressed up as peace with honor. But America will survive. It will retreat from the Middle East. The petrodollar will weaken. The region will reorganize around new power centers. And the world that emerges from this war will be fundamentally different from the one that existed before it. This is not prophecy. This is game theory. This is structural history applied to the present moment. I might be wrong. And if I am wrong, we will come back and analyze why. Because that is what this class is about. Not being right all the time, but thinking carefully, questioning our assumptions, and following the logic wherever it leads.